The diner smelled of fresh coffee and buttered toast, the kind of scent that clung to the booths and wrapped itself around anyone who walked in. It was a Tuesday night in Nashville, the kind of slow evening when only a handful of customers lingered under the flickering neon sign outside. Emily Carter adjusted her apron and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She had been on her feet since noon, delivering plates of burgers and pouring endless cups of coffee. At 25, she was stuck between the dream she had always chased, becoming a singer, and the reality of barely making rent. Her coworkers teased her often, saying she had the voice of an angel but the luck of someone who had misplaced her wings. Still, Emily hummed under her breath as she cleared a table, her soft notes rising above the dull clatter of forks. Music was her only escape, her only reminder that she was more than a waitress in a cheap uniform. Near the corner booth sat an elderly man with a crooked smile and a paper party hat perched awkwardly on his head. A single slice of pie rested in front of him, a tiny candle flickering uncertainly in the drafty diner. He was alone, no family, no friends, just him and that fragile flame. Emily felt a tug at her heart. She couldn't ignore it. "Sir," she said gently, walking over, "is it your birthday?" The man looked up, surprised, his eyes moist with a mixture of joy and sadness. "Yeah," he said softly, 72 today, first one I've spent alone." Emily hesitated. Her manager would probably frown at her for wasting time, but something inside her refused to just walk away. She cleared her throat, placed the coffee pot down, and without thinking twice, began to sing. "Happy birthday to you." Her voice was pure and warm, carrying across the diner like sunlight spilling through dusty blinds. Every note seemed to pause time itself. The other customers, scattered and tired, turned their heads. Forks froze midair. Conversations died. It was as if the whole diner had fallen under her spell. The old man's lips trembled, his hands shaking as he cupped a tiny flame before blowing it out. His eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of gratitude. "Thank you, sweetheart," he whispered. "That meant more than you'll ever know." For a moment, Emily felt like her voice had done what it was meant to do: heal, connect, make someone feel less alone. The clapping started softly from one booth, then spread until the entire diner echoed with applause. Emily's cheeks flushed red. She laughed nervously and bowed her head. She didn't know someone had been filming the whole thing from the back of the room. A teenage boy with a cracked phone screen had recorded every note. To him, it wasn't just a waitress singing. It was a star trapped in the wrong place, and by the next morning, the world would see her. But Emily didn't know that yet. She just wiped her hands on her apron and went back to work, humming the tune under her breath, while the elderly man savored the last bite of pie with a smile he hadn't worn in years. The night dragged on, dishes piled high, orders stacked, and the world outside remained unaware of what had just happened inside that tiny diner. But as the neon sign buzzed faintly and the rain began to drizzle against the glass, fate had already started to stir. Emily's life was about to tilt off its axis. The next chapter wasn't waiting tables. It wasn't late-night shifts and tips barely enough to cover gas. It was something bigger, brighter, and far more dangerous than she could imagine. Her voice had broken free, and the world was listening. Tomorrow a record label would call, and with it, a storm she wasn't prepared for. Emily woke up the next morning to the buzz of her old phone vibrating on the nightstand. She groaned, rolling over on the thin mattress of her cramped studio apartment. Sunlight leaked through the blinds, dust floating lazily in the air. She stretched her arms, still sore from the late-night shift, and fumbled for her phone. Notifications exploded across the cracked screen, texts, missed calls, and hundreds of alerts from apps she barely used. Her best friend Kelly had left 15 messages. "You're viral. Check Twitter now." Blinking through sleep, Emily clicked the link Kelly had sent. Her heart skipped. It was her, the video from the diner. She stood frozen as she watched herself on the grainy clip, singing happy birthday to the lonely man in the corner booth. The sound wasn't perfect, but her voice carried, it soared. The comments beneath the video were endless. "Who is this waitress? She sings like an angel. Better than half the people on the radio right now. Somebody give her a record deal already." Emily's chest tightened. She scrolled faster, her pulse racing. The video had already hit 1 million views overnight. 1 million. She pressed her hand to her mouth, disbelief flooding her. The whole world had just peeked into her secret. That voice she only shared with shower tiles and empty diners was now out there, untamed and unstoppable. Her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello," her voice shook. "Is this Emily Carter?" A crisp, professional tone filled her ear. "My name is Brian Keller, talent scout for Horizon Records. We saw your video. Our executives would like to meet you in person." Emily sat straight up, nearly dropping the phone. Horizon Records wasn't some small-town label. It was the kind of name whispered in Nashville bars by every struggling musician who dreamed of getting signed. Her throat went dry. "Oh, I think you might have the wrong person. I'm just—" "No mistake," Brian interrupted smoothly. "The world has already found you. Now it's your choice if you want to step forward. Can you come in tomorrow?" Emily could barely breathe. She mumbled a shaky yes, hung up, and dropped the phone onto the sheets. Her heart thundered like a runaway train. This couldn't be real. Just last night, she was pouring stale coffee for truck drivers. Today, a record label was calling her. She rushed to get ready for her shift, her mind spinning. At the diner, things were no different. Coffee pots steaming, plates clattering, but everyone stared at her like she was someone else. Coworkers who used to mock her suddenly whispered behind their hands. One leaned over and sneered, "Guess you're famous now, huh? Don't forget us little people when you're gone." Emily forced a polite smile, but the words stung. Fame wasn't even hers yet, but jealousy had already crept in. She pushed through the shift, avoiding their eyes, while her phone continued to buzz with messages from strangers, journalists, and even local news channels wanting interviews. During her break, she sat outside under the gray Nashville sky, sipping from a paper cup. She scrolled again, but this time she noticed something new. Comments weren't just kind anymore. Some mocked her uniform, her hair, her background. "Cute story, but she's just a diner girl. She won't last." Another said, "One-hit wonder. Don't waste a contract on her." Her stomach sank. The internet could lift her up, but also tear her down in seconds. She wasn't ready for this kind of spotlight. She never imagined strangers dissecting her like she was a product. Emily's thoughts were interrupted when a man in a tailored suit stepped out of a black car across the street. He looked around, then walked toward her. He was older, with sharp eyes and the calm confidence of someone used to boardrooms and million-dollar deals. He stopped in front of her table. "You're Emily Carter," he said, not a question, a statement. She blinked. "Yes, do I know you?" "No," he said, his voice steady, "but I know talent when I see it. My name is Mark Johnson." Her jaw dropped. She recognized the name instantly. Mark wasn't just any businessman. He was a self-made millionaire who invested in music ventures across Nashville. Stories about him were legendary, how he discovered singers nobody believed in and turned them into household names. "I saw the video," Mark continued. "You don't belong behind a counter. You belong on a stage." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but fear held her back. "I don't know. People are already saying I'm just a waitress. Maybe they're right." Mark leaned closer, his eyes unwavering. "The world loves tearing people down before they rise. That's not your problem. Your only job is to sing, and sing like no one can shut you up." Her chest ached with the weight of his words. For the first time, someone wasn't mocking her or brushing her off. Someone powerful believed in her. She swallowed hard, nodding slowly, as if accepting a truth she had buried for years. When Mark walked away, Emily sat frozen, her heart pounding. The rain started to fall in light drops, dotting her apron, but she didn't move. She finally whispered to herself, "Maybe this is real. Maybe this is my shot." Little did she know, as her name spread across screens and her number was passed around music executives, someone else was watching. Someone who wasn't cheering her rise, but plotting her fall. The storm had only begun, and Emily was standing in the middle of it. The morning of the audition came faster than Emily could process. She stood in front of her cracked mirror, brushing her hair for the third time, her stomach a tangled knot. She didn't own glamorous clothes, just a few simple dresses she'd worn to church or family gatherings. After a long pause, she pulled out a soft blue dress she hadn't worn in years. It wasn't flashy, but it was clean and decent. She slipped it on, grabbed her worn leather bag, and whispered to her reflection, "Just sing. That's all you can do." The Horizon Records building rose like a glass cathedral downtown, intimidating and magnificent. Emily's footsteps echoed nervously against the marble floor as she entered the lobby. People in expensive suits brushed past her, their heels clicking, their voices clipped and confident. She felt like a child wandering into a place she didn't belong. Emily Carter, a woman with a headset, appeared, clipboard in hand. "They're ready for you." Emily followed, her palms damp, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The audition room wasn't much larger than a classroom, but its walls carried an air of judgment. A long table stretched across one side, where 3 executives sat, including Brian Keller, the scout who had called her. Beside him was Chase Miller, the young director of Horizon Records. He leaned back in his chair, sleek, charming, and far too polished. His smile was warm, but his eyes flickered with calculation. "Emily," Brian greeted, "we've been looking forward to this." She nodded, her throat dry. "Thank you for having me." Chase gestured casually. "Whenever you're ready." Emily took a deep breath. She thought of the lonely man at the diner, of the way her voice had made him smile, and let that memory steady her. Then she opened her mouth and sang. Her voice filled the room, trembling at first, but growing with strength and clarity. The melody lifted, wrapping around the cold air of the corporate space until it felt less like a boardroom and more like a sanctuary. When she finished, the silence was heavy. Chase was the first to break it. He clapped slowly, his grin widening. Well, the internet didn't exaggerate. You've got something real, Emily, something raw." "What?" Her knees wobbled, relief and disbelief washing over her. Brian nodded. "We like to consider signing you. Of course, there's a process, contracts, training, image development." Emily barely heard the rest. All she could think was, "They want me." For once, her voice wasn't just background noise. It mattered. But outside that very building, leaning against a sleek black car, Veronica Hayes scrolled through her phone with narrowed eyes. A local lounge singer desperate for a big break, she had been clawing her way through smoky bars and late-night gigs for years. And now a waitress with no stage experience was stealing the attention she'd bled for. She sneered as she replayed Emily's viral clip. "Cute voice," she muttered, "but let's see how long she lasts." Back inside, Emily stepped into the hallway, her chest buzzing with adrenaline. Kelly had been waiting there, bouncing with excitement. "How did it go? Tell me everything." Emily smiled, tears forming. "They liked me, Kelly. They want me." Kelly hugged her tight. "I told you, girl, I told you this was your moment." For the first time in years, Emily let herself believe it might be true. That night she returned to the diner for her shift. Customers whispered, some congratulating her, others rolling their eyes. The cook, a gruff man named Joe, shook his head. "Don't forget us when you're a big star." Emily laughed nervously, unsure how to respond. Fame felt distant, fragile, like a bubble that might burst if she touched it too hard. As the night wound down, the door chimed. Mark Johnson walked in, the millionaire who had approached her before. He ordered coffee, then gestured for her to sit. "You did well today," he said simply. Emily blinked. "You knew about the audition." "Of course, in this town, news travels fast. Horizon will give you attention, but be careful. They see numbers and profit, not people." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Mark sipped his coffee, his gaze steady. "They'll dress you up, market you, maybe even change who you are. The question is, are you ready to fight to stay yourself?" Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to say yes, but doubt knotted her. She was just a waitress after all. Who was she to fight an industry? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She hesitated, then picked up. "Emily Carter," a smooth voice asked. "This is Chase Miller. You impressed us today. I'd like to meet with you personally, just you and me. Tomorrow evening, we'll discuss your future." Her chest fluttered with both excitement and fear. The door was opening wider than ever, but was it leading to her dream or a trap? She didn't know yet, but tomorrow would bring her face to face with the sweet promise and the sharp fangs of success. Emily's hands trembled as she slipped her phone back into her apron. Chase Miller wanted to meet her privately. The idea thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. She wasn't naive. She'd heard the stories of young artists promised the world, only to end up broken. Yet part of her whispered, "This is your shot, Emily. Don't blow it." The next morning, she sat in the diner's back booth during her break, staring at the rain streaking down the windows. Mark Johnson walked in again like he belonged there. He wore no flashy suit today, just a dark jacket, but his presence still filled the room. He slid into the booth across from her without asking. "You look worried," he said matter-of-factly. Emily exhaled. "Chase Miller called me last night. He wants to meet Justice." Mark's expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened slightly. "Of course he does. That man knows how to spot an opportunity and how to twist it to his advantage." Emily frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Mark replied, leaning in, "that Chase sees you as a story to sell. The viral waitress with the golden voice. He'll promise you the stars, but if you're not careful, you'll end up a product, not a person." Her throat tightened. "So what do I do? This is the biggest opportunity I've ever had." Mark studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Take the meeting, but don't go in alone. Let me help you. I've backed artists before. I know the contracts, the tricks, the games. If you want, I can sit in, make sure you're not swallowed whole." Emily hesitated. Accepting his help felt like reaching for a lifeline, but it also terrified her. "Why me? You don't even know me." Mark's gaze softened, a rare crack in his steel demeanor. Because once the waitress helped me when I had nothing. She didn't know I was rich. She just treated me like a human being when the world didn't. He reminded me of her when he sang, "I don't like seeing people with real talent crushed by sharks." The words lodged in Emily's chest, heavy and warm. She nodded slowly, whispering, "Okay, I'll let you help." What? Across town, Veronica Hayes practiced in front of a mirror in her cramped apartment. She was dressed in sequins, her lipstick smudged from rehearsing her set over and over. She scrolled through her phone, seething at the endless coverage of Emily. Viral waitress this, small-town angel that. It made her blood boil. "She doesn't deserve it," Veronica hissed at her reflection. "I've been grinding for years. I've played every dive bar in this city, and they want her, a nobody in an apron." She grabbed her phone and texted a contact at a local gossip site. "Got a scoop for you. That new girl, Emily Carter, not as sweet as she looks. Call me." Back at the diner, Kelly slid into the booth beside Emily, eyes wide with excitement. "Girl, do you even know what this means? Chase Miller is the kind of guy who can put you on a magazine cover in a month. This is huge." Emily chewed her lip. "Mark says I need to be careful, that they'll try to change me." Kelly waved a hand. "Maybe change isn't bad. You've been stuck here for years. Don't you want to get out?" The words stung, even though Kelly didn't mean them to. Emily wanted out more than anyone, but not if it meant losing herself. She didn't want to be some plastic version of the girl who once sang to a lonely old man over pie. That evening she sat at her tiny desk, staring at a blank notebook page. She wrote down the question burning inside her: who do I want to be when the spotlight finds me? She didn't have the answer yet. Meanwhile, Veronica was already setting her plan in motion. By morning, whispers would spread online. Emily wasn't just a sweet waitress. She was ambitious, calculating, maybe even sleeping her way into a contract. The lies were subtle but venomous, and in the cutthroat world of music, whispers could turn into headlines overnight. Emily, oblivious, closed her notebook and stared out the window at the city lights. For the first time, Nashville felt less like a cage and more like a stage waiting to be claimed. Tomorrow's meeting with Chase could be the beginning of everything she'd ever dreamed of, or the beginning of her undoing. And somewhere Veronica smiled coldly at her reflection, already savoring the fall she planned to orchestrate. The next evening, Emily found herself in the lobby of a luxury hotel she had only seen in glossy magazines. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers, and a pianist played softly in the corner. She clutched her purse tightly, her breath catching as she spotted Chase Miller waiting near the bar. He looked every bit the industry golden boy, tailored navy suit, easy smile, the kind of presence that made heads turn. "Emily," he said warmly as she approached, "you look beautiful." Her cheeks flushed. She wore the same soft blue dress from her audition, hardly glamorous, but Chase made her feel like she belonged. He led her to a private table, ordered sparkling water for her, and leaned in with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "I want to be honest with you," Chase began. "You have something rare, something people can't fake. Horizon sees numbers, but I see potential, real potential." Emily tried to steady her voice. "But I'm just me. I don't know anything about this world." Chase smiled. "That's what makes you special. The industry is full of polished pretenders. You're real, and people crave real." His words wrapped around her like silk. For the first time, she let herself imagine it. Lights, a stage, thousands of people singing her words back to her. She felt dizzy with possibility. But while Chase painted dreams, Veronica Hayes was busy sharpening knives. In a dimly lit lounge across town, she sipped whiskey and fed gossip to a blogger desperate for clicks. "She's not who she pretends to be," Veronica purred. "That sweet waitress act, it's all calculated. She'll use anyone to get ahead." The blogger typed furiously, hungry for scandal. By morning, the first whispers would spread online. Emily wasn't an innocent discovery, but a schemer with a hidden agenda. Back at the hotel, Chase slid a folder across the table. "Here's a preliminary contract. Nothing binding yet, just an outline of what we can offer. Studio time, promotion, a debut single. But Emily," he lowered his voice, eyes locking onto hers, "this only works if you trust me. The world's about to open its arms to you, but it can turn cold fast. You'll need someone who knows how to guide you, someone like me." Emily stared at the folder, her hands trembling. She thought of Mark's warning, "They'll see profit, not people." Yet here Chase was, looking at her like she mattered. It was hard not to believe him. "Can I think about it?" she asked softly. Chase's smile didn't falter, but his eyes sharpened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, take a few days, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't wait forever." When Emily left the hotel, the cool night air hit her like a wave. She leaned against the railing outside, her heart pounding. She wanted this more than anything, but fear gnawed at her. Was she stepping into her dream, or a trap dressed in promises? Her phone buzzed. Kelly's voice came through in a rush. "Em, have you seen the blogs? They're saying you're fake, that you're playing the victim to get famous." Emily froze, her stomach twisting. "What? That's not true. Why would anyone say that?" Kelly sighed. "Jealousy maybe, but it's spreading. You need to be careful." Emily's chest ached. Just yesterday, the world was calling her an angel. Today, strangers were painting her as a fraud. She whispered to herself, "I just wanted to sing." But far from the city lights, Veronica closed her laptop with a satisfied smirk. Her poison had begun to seep into the world, and she wasn't done yet. Emily, unaware of how deep the trap went, clutched her bag and walked home under the Nashville stars. The path ahead glittered with possibility, but shadows were gathering quickly around her. The sweet promises had been made. Soon she would discover the cost. Emily spent the next 2 days in a haze, caught between exhilaration and dread. The folder Chase had given her sat unopened on her nightstand, its sleek cover daring her to step inside a world she barely understood. Every time she reached for it, Mark's words echoed in her head. "They'll dress you up, market you, maybe even change who you are." At the diner, whispers grew louder. Some customers came in just to see the viral waitress, smiling and asking for selfies. Others sneered, muttering, "She won't last a month." Her coworkers, once dismissive, now alternated between fake praise and quiet resentment. Emily felt trapped in a spotlight she hadn't asked for. Her safe little corner of the world turned into a stage she couldn't leave. One evening, her phone buzzed with another call from Chase. "Emily, we need to move forward. I've arranged a meeting with some investors. They want to hear you sing live. Tomorrow, be ready." Her chest tightened. "Investors? I thought this was just about the label." Chase's laugh was smooth, practiced. "Labels don't run on dreams, sweetheart. They run on money. And money wants to see what it's buying. Trust me, you'll thank me later." The call ended before she could respond. Emily sat frozen, dread crawling up her spine. Something in his tone had shifted. Less mentor, more owner. The next evening, she arrived at a high-rise penthouse where the meeting was to be held. The city glittered below like spilled diamonds, but the air inside was suffocating. Men in expensive suits sipped whiskey, murmuring to each other as Chase guided her to the center of the room. "Everyone," Chase announced with a charming grin, "meet Emily Carter, our next rising star." Polite applause followed, but Emily felt like an exhibit rather than a guest. Chase handed her a microphone. "Sing something," he whispered, his hand lingering on her arm just a moment too long. Her throat went dry. She glanced around the room, then closed her eyes and began to sing. Her voice trembled at first but steadied, rising into the air with fragile beauty. For a moment she forgot the suits, the money, the pressure. It was just her and the song. When she finished, the room clapped, though it felt more like approval of an investment than appreciation of art. One man leaned toward Chase, murmuring loudly enough for her to hear, "She'll clean up nicely with the right styling. Innocent face, strong pipes, perfect package." Emily's stomach twisted. She wasn't a person to them. She was merchandise. After the meeting, Chase pulled her aside into the dim hallway. His smile had cooled into something harder. "You did fine tonight. But listen, Emily, if you want to survive in this business, you have to let me lead. Don't question, don't hesitate, just follow my direction." She flinched at the sharpness in his tone. "I thought this was about my music." Chase's eyes narrowed. "Music is just part of it. Image sells, stories sell. And you're the waitress with the golden voice. That's your brand now. Don't ruin it by thinking too much." The words hit her like ice water. He wasn't building her dream. He was building a prodder. She bit back tears, nodding numbly until he let her go. Outside, rain pelted the sidewalks as Emily stumbled into the night. She felt hollow, used, like her voice had been stolen and repackaged before her eyes. She pulled her jacket tighter, whispering to herself, "What am I doing? This isn't what I wanted." "What?" Her phone buzzed again, but this time it was a text from Mark. "How did it go?" Emily hesitated, then typed back, "I think I made a mistake." As she pressed send, she caught sight of her reflection in a rain-streaked window. For the first time, she saw the danger Mark had warned her about. The dream was still there, but so was the trap, and she was caught in the middle. Meanwhile, across town, Veronica smirked at her laptop. The gossip pieces she planted were spreading fast. Headlines questioned Emily's sudden rise, speculated about her connections, and mocked her as just a diner girl with a gimmick. The timing was perfect. With Chase tightening his grip and the world starting to doubt her, Emily's rise was already cracking. But storms don't just destroy. Sometimes they clear the sky for the truth to shine through. and Emily was about to discover she had more fight in her than anyone expected. The rain hadn't let up all night. Emily sat curled on her narrow bed, staring at the unopened folder Chase had given her. It sat there like a threat, reminding her of everything she stood to gain and everything she might lose. She thought of the men in suits, of the way Chase's hand lingered too long on her arm, of the words "perfect package" spoken like she wasn't even human. A knot formed in her throat, thick and choking. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. "Meet me tomorrow, noon. There's something I want you to see." Emily almost ignored it. She was exhausted, afraid, and tempted to crawl back into the anonymity of diner life. But the memory of the old man with the birthday candle returned to her. She had sung for him because she couldn't bear to leave someone unseen. Now she wondered if she owed herself the same kindness. The next day she found herself standing outside a small bar tucked into the corner of an old Nashville street. Mark was waiting by the door, hands in his coat pockets, his eyes steady as always. "What is this place?" she asked. "An open mic," he said simply. "Not glamorous, no contracts, no executives, just people. Sing for them and you'll remember why you started." Emily shook her head. "But what if no one comes? What if they don't care?" Mark's mouth curved into the faintest smile. "Then you've lost nothing. But if even one person listens, really listens, then you've won." That night the bar was half empty, filled with locals sipping cheap beer and laughing over dart games. Emily's stomach twisted as she waited her turn. When the host finally called her name, she stepped onto the tiny stage, her hands trembling against the mic. She took a deep breath and began to sing. No fancy lighting, no polished production, just her voice, pure, honest, fragile. The conversations in the bar slowed, then stopped altogether. People turned their heads. By the second verse, even the dart players had put down their drinks. Phones lifted, recording the moment without her realizing. For the first time in weeks, Emily wasn't singing to impress anyone. She wasn't trying to be a brand or a viral clip. She was just Emily Carter, a girl who loved music, and the room felt it. When she finished, silence hung for a beat, then applause erupted, loud and real. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She pressed a hand to her chest, whispering into the mic, "Thank you." In the crowd, Mark nodded, his expression unreadable but proud. He had seen what she couldn't, that her gift didn't need polishing or packaging. It just needed to be heard. Later that night, as Emily sat outside the bar catching her breath, a stranger approached. "Hey," he said, holding up his phone. "I hope you don't mind, but I streamed your set. People are going nuts in the comments. You've got something special." Emily blanked, stunned. "You streamed it?" The stranger grinned. "Yeah. Thousands watched live. You might want to check your socials." Her phone buzzed endlessly in her pocket. Another wave of attention was already building, but this time it wasn't from a staged showcase or a viral accident. It was from her, raw and unfiltered. Back at her apartment, Emily scrolled through the flood of comments. Viewers wrote about how her voice gave them chills, how her song reminded them of lost love, how they wanted more. She cried quietly, overwhelmed, but this time it wasn't fear, it was release. Across town, Chase read the same comments, his jaw tightening. He hadn't orchestrated this. She had done it on her own, outside his control. He slammed his glass onto the table, muttering, "She thinks she can go around me. She'll regret that." And in her dimly lit apartment, Emily whispered to herself, "This is who I am. This is what I was meant to do." But she didn't yet realize how high the stakes had become, or how far her enemies were willing to go to silence her. The next morning, Emily woke to a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications piled in faster than she could open them. Clips from the open mic had spread overnight, picked up by pages far beyond Nashville. One headline read, "Viral Waitress Stuns Again, this time with soul-bearing live performance." Another, "No record deal, no spotlight, just pure talent." Emily sat on the edge of her bed, tears filling her eyes. This wasn't like the first viral video. This time, people weren't captivated by a novelty. They were connecting with her heart. Kelly called, her voice squealing through the speaker. You broke the internet again. Do you even realize what's happening? Everyone's talking about how real you are. They're saying you make the big label singers look fake." Emily laughed shakily, wiping her cheeks. I just sang, Kelly, that's all I did." But not everyone was celebrating. Across town, Veronica Hayes sat hunched over her laptop, her nails tapping furiously against the keys. She had expected her smear campaign to bury Emily, but instead it was collapsing. The comments on the gossip blogs had shifted. Viewers who had seen Emily's open mic performance were pushing back hard. "This girl isn't fake. Did you hear her sing last night?" Those rumors are garbage. She's the real deal. Jealousy much. Whoever's spreading lies needs to sit down. Veronica slammed her laptop shut, rage twisting her features. No, 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 she's not supposed to win, not her. Meanwhile, at Horizon Records, Chase Miller paced his office, scrolling through the viral clips. His jaw tightened. Emily was slipping out of his grasp. He had planned to brand her, control her, and profit from her. Now she was building a following on her own, a following that didn't need his approval. He picked up the phone, barking at his assistant. Give me every blogger, every outlet. We need to control this narrative. She works with us, or she doesn't work at all. But outside the games of executives and rivals, Emily was discovering something she had never felt before. Power, real, unfiltered power. She sat with her notebook open, scribbling lyrics as fast as they came. Her songs weren't about contracts or charts. They were about the old man in the diner, about loneliness and hope, about finding light in the dark. She was finally writing for herself. That afternoon, Mark met her at a quiet cafe. He set down a folded newspaper on the table. The headline read, "From waitress to star, Nashville's new voice shakes the industry." Emily shook her head, overwhelmed. I don't even know what to think anymore. Mark sipped his coffee. Think about this. You've done more in a week on your own than most labels manage in a year. The truth always rises, Emily. The world can tell when someone's real. She bit her lip. But what if it doesn't last? What if they forget me tomorrow? Mark leaned in, his eyes firm. Then you sing again and again, because this isn't about chasing their approval. It's about giving them something true to hold on to. That's what they'll never forget. Emily nodded slowly, her chest warming with resolve. She wasn't just reacting anymore. She was choosing. That night she posted a simple video online. No makeup, no fancy setup, just her in her tiny apartment with a guitar. I don't know where this is going, she told the camera, her voice trembling but strong. But I know I want to keep singing, not for fame, not for headlines, for you. For anyone who's ever felt small or overlooked, this is me. Then she sang a song she had written hours before, raw and imperfect but drenched in honesty. Within hours, the video exploded. Comments flooded in from around the world. Fans defended her against every rumor, lifting her higher than before. Hashtags with her name trended, drowning out Veronica's lies. The truth had broken through, undeniable and unstoppable. Across town, Veronica scrolled in disbelief as her name began trending too, but not how she wanted. Screenshots revealed her messages to bloggers, her lies exposed for everyone to see. The internet turned on her with a fury she hadn't expected. Emily, unaware of the full storm brewing against her rival, curled up with her guitar and whispered into the quiet night, "I'm not going back, not ever." The tide had shifted, the lies had failed, but in the shadows Chase wasn't finished. He still had one card left to play, and it could shatter everything Emily was building. The internet doesn't forgive, and it never forgets. By the time the sun rose, Veronica Hayes had become the story, not Emily. Screenshots of her messages to bloggers, her attempts to sabotage Emily, were everywhere. Former fans turned on her in droves. Hashtags that once celebrated her shows now mocked her cruelty. At a downtown lounge where she was booked to perform, the manager intercepted her at the door. "I'm sorry, Veronica," he said stiffly. "We can't have you here tonight. The backlash is too much. Sponsors are pulling out." Her face paled. "What, you can't do this? I'm the headliner." "Not anymore," he replied flatly and walked away. Veronica stood frozen on the sidewalk, her sequined dress glittering under harsh streetlights. For years she had clawed for recognition, and in 1 week a waitress had taken it all. She pulled her coat tighter, fury boiling inside, but there was no one with to hear her rage. The industry had closed its doors. Meanwhile, Emily stood backstage at the Riverfront Festival, Nashville's biggest outdoor music event. She had been invited at the last minute, thanks to the viral storm of her open mic and her acoustic video. The stage crew bustled around her, checking lights and sound, while thousands of people gathered on the lawn outside. Her stomach churned. She had never sung for more than a diner full of strangers, maybe a bar crowded best. Now the sea of voices outside hummed like a tidal wave waiting to crash. She clutched her guitar so tightly her knuckles turned white. Kelly appeared at her side, practically glowing. "Em, look at this crowd. They're chanting your name already. You've got this." Emily shook her head. "What if I mess up? What if they realize I'm just a waitress who got lucky?" Kelly grabbed her shoulders, eyes blazing. "No, you're the girl who made an old man's birthday special. You're the voice that stopped a bar full of people in their tracks. You're not lucky, Emily, you're good. Now go show them." Before Emily could answer, Mark Johnson approached. He looked as calm as ever, but there was a spark of pride in his eyes. "Remember," he said quietly, "sing for yourself. Not for them, not for me, not for anyone else. If you do that, you can't lose." Emily nodded, her heart steadying. The stage manager gave her the signal. It was time. She stepped out into the lights, the roar of the crowd hitting her like a wave. For a moment she froze, blinded by the brilliance of it all. Then she strummed the first chord. Her voice rose, shaky at first, then stronger, richer, carried by the wind over the thousands who stood listening. The audience quieted, and they began to sway. By the chorus they were singing with her, strangers becoming a choir under the Nashville stars. Emily felt tears streak down her cheeks as she poured every ounce of herself into the song. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was hers. When the final note faded, silence held for a heartbeat, then erupted into thunderous applause. Emily bowed her head, overwhelmed. She had come from greasy aprons and late-night shifts, from whispered doubts and cruel rumors, and now she stood here, not as a waitress, not as a viral accident, but as an artist. Backstage, Chase Miller watched from the shadows, his jaw tight. He had tried to control her, brand her, profit from her. Now she was proving she didn't need him. He pulled out his phone, dialing furiously. "Get me a contract ready," he barked. "If she won't come willingly, we'll make sure she has no other choice." Emily, oblivious to the storm still brewing behind her, wiped her tears and smiled through the cheers. For the first time, she felt free. But freedom has a cost, and Chase wasn't the kind of man to let go easily. The fall of Veronica was complete. The rise of Emily had begun, and the final battle for her future was only just ahead. The roar of the Riverfront Festival still echoed in Emily's ears hours after she left the stage. Her phone was flooded with messages from reporters, agents, fans, everyone wanting a piece of her. For a fleeting moment, she let herself imagine that this was the end of the struggle, but she knew better. The music industry wasn't a fairy tale. The real test was just beginning. Back at her apartment, she sat cross-legged on the bed, guitar in her lap. The city outside pulsed with neon lights, but Emily's thoughts were heavier. She thought about the lonely old man in the diner, the first person she had sung for without hesitation. She thought about the venom of Veronica, the false promises of Chase, the steady guidance of Mark, and the unwavering support of Kelly. Every step had led her here, but what came next had to be hers and hers alone. The next morning, Chase Miller strut. Horizon Records announced publicly that Emily Carter was in talks with their label. The press release painted her as their discovery, the product of their vision, their guidance. Emily read it in disbelief, her hands shaking. She hadn't signed anything. She hadn't agreed, yet now the world thought she belonged to them. She called Chase immediately. "What is this? You don't own me." His voice was cool, smug. "It's the game, Emily. Perception is reality. The press believes you're with us, and soon you won't have a choice. Either sign the contract or watch your reputation crumble under rumors I can feed in seconds." Her chest tightened. "You can't do that." "Oh, I can," Chase replied smoothly. "And I will, unless you fall in line." Emily hung up, tears burning her eyes. The walls felt like they were closing in. She was on the brink of everything she had ever wanted, and now it threatened to slip away. Mark arrived within the hour, his face grim. "You have two choices," he told her. "Let them on you or fight back, but fighting back means risk. It means putting yourself out there without their safety net. Are you ready for that?" Emily wiped her tears, her jaw setting with new resolve. "I didn't come this far to let someone else write my story." That night she live-streamed from her apartment. No fancy lights, no filters, just her, a guitar, and her truth. She spoke directly to the camera, her voice shaking but clear. "I need you all to know I don't belong to anyone, not a label, not a manager, I'm just me. And if that's not enough for this industry, then so be it. But I won't let my voice be stolen, not again." Then she sang a song she had written only hours before, one that poured out of her like a confession. It was about fear and courage, about being overlooked, about finding strength in the cracks where light gets in. Her voice cracked with emotion, tears slipping down her face as she strummed, but she didn't stop. Every note was raw, unpolished, and utterly human. Viewers poured in by the thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Comments lit up the screen. "This is real music. What? She's the voice we've been waiting for. Don't let them take her, protect her." By the time she ended, her hands shaking on the final chord the world had chosen, they weren't siding with the labels or the executives, they were siding with Emily. The next day, headlines shifted. Emily Carter rejects label control, fans rally behind independent path. The pressure on Horizon Records grew unbearable. Chase tried to spin the story, but the tide had turned. The world had seen his manipulation, and his grip was broken. By the end of the week, he resigned quietly, his reputation in tatters. Emily, meanwhile, stood in front of another crowd a month later, this time at a charity concert she organized herself. The stage lights washed over her as she introduced her final song of the night. "This is for anyone who's ever felt small, forgotten, or silenced," she said softly, her voice steady. "You are more than what they tell you, and your voice matters." She began to sing, not for contracts, not for headlines, for herself, for the people who had believed in her when she had nothing, for the strangers who found healing in her words, for the lonely man in the diner who lit a candle on a slice of pie. As her song soared into the night, people in the crowd wiped tears from their eyes. Some held hands, some sang along. It wasn't just music, it was connection, it was healing. And when the final chord faded, Emily Carter stood in the silence that followed, her heart open, her spirit unbroken. She was no longer just the waitress who sang happy birthday to a stranger. She was the woman who turned her voice into a beacon, and in doing so, found her freedom. The healing song was hers, and it had set her free.